This is Marketing from the Front Lines, where we speak with B2B marketers who are in the trenches, bringing technology to market. Here's your host, Brett Stapper, CEO of Frontlines.io.
Hey, everyone, and thanks for listening. Today, we're speaking with Carolyn Crandall. Carolyn, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and I'm really excited for this conversation. And I'm really excited because, as I was just telling you pre-interview, I know there's a lot of buzz right now about being a fractional CMO. And the goal of today's episode is going to be to really just dive deep into that topic. So before we dive deep into that topic, let's learn just a little bit more about you and how you made your way into this world of marketing.
Yeah. So I have been doing this straight out of college, kind of tripped into it by accident. I was actually selling women's shoes, and that was a terrible job to have. And ended up applying for a job at a high tech company and ended up getting in as the assistant to the VP of marketing. And it was kind of all she wrote. And, now nearly, should I say, 40 years later, I've been doing it. So various sales, marketing roles. I've had the great fortune of working for some of the fastest growing companies as they've been growing. So the early days of Cisco and Juniper and Riverbed and Seagate. And more recently, after the last probably 15 years or so, all startups. And my most recent was Attivo Networks, where employee number 26 super early on, and they got acquired by SentinelOne. SentinelOne's largest acquisition, over 600 million, so a phenomenal exit. And then since then, it's really just been doing fractional work because I love marketing. I love high tech. I just really didn't want to do full time with a individual company. I just love doing different things. And this gave me a great opportunity as a fractional to just white piece of paper or things that were a hairball that I could de-hairball and do something with.
So that time frame there, that use that as a reference point, but only because you said it. So let's go 4 decades back. How have you seen tech marketing evolve over the last 4 decades?
Oh my gosh, when was the last time you printed something and took it to a trade show, and collected competitive information by stealing stuff from people's booths? The whole internet changed everything so much about how we market just in general. And, email marketing from old, send you brochures in the mail kind of stuff. But you've continued to evolve forward with the use of the internet, with email outreach. Events have always been events, but even they have evolved with virtual events and activities now to today, because everything is, and probably since COVID time, right? Everything kind of went, all right, we're not meeting in person, we're doing everything virtual. So how do we now engage in a digital world, which makes us think about things? Well, what is that whole digital experience and all of those channels? And what I'll talk about as the left of MQL, right? Before you waited till it was all qualified and ready and handed it up to sales, or you did the terrible thing, which was flood them with unqualified leads and made them really mad. But now with the advent of AI and automation and other things, that we as marketers absolutely should be moving to the left of an MQL. And as soon as somebody hits your website, right, you don't have to wait because there's not a human investment to go after them. You can go after them with AI, right? And really speed up that process and move the deal process along so that you are engaged early. You're not relying on the sales team to go ahead and advance it, that you're taking control and you're understanding your ICP, your message testing, your content that you have to pull people in, and readiness. Like, always the first company to get into the deal has the competitive advantage, right? You set the stage. And so being able to do that by jumping on people as they visit the website, and when I say jumping on, not in a bad way, I mean, you don't want to be creepy, stocky or anything, but just, how else can we help you? Can we set an appointment? Can we show you a demo? Can we get you engaged early in a educational and supportive way versus, like I said, creepy, stocky way that I saw you on the website. But I do like the tools that are out there today that let us do that in a way that's really scalable, even on tiny, tiny budgets.
I always get a little bit creeped out when I get those emails. I see it a lot in the consumer world. I'll be on a consumer brand website and then all of a sudden I get an email from them. I don't like that.
Yeah.
As a mark.
Yeah, you left that shirt in the shopping cart. I'm sure it would look really good on you. Would you like to revisit that? I mean, this is, it's a little different. And again, you can be creepy stocky, or you can simply say, I saw you visiting the service page. Were you aware that we do these things? Or, here's a little bit more information. That it's always done in a helpful way. Mm-hmm. There are practices, especially when it's more inbound, that says you should be a little more direct and offering an appointment up right away. which I always believe there should be a CTA button for that. But I kind of lean from the more educational side of things that if you are convinced of the value, you're going to want to talk to me, right? And you also need to talk to that person in their voice and in their problem, because you know what? I pick your number, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 cybersecurity companies that are out there, all out there have awesome technology that their founders think are the best thing in the world, but they may or may not solve that person's problem. So very quickly find out, can you provide value? And if not, move on, right? If you send me 500 emails, it doesn't mean I'm going to buy if I don't have a need, right? So find out if you've got your match and move on. And that makes you very efficient and effective in the things you're doing.
I want to go back a little bit to your journey. So when you decided to go out and become a fractional CMO, what did the first 90 days look like for you? Did you already have a customer? Did you have to go to your network and say, hey, I'm out here now, I'm doing this? What did that first 3-month chunk look like?
Yeah, I was really fortunate. I don't know that my journey is the same as most people's journey. So I came off of a really successful exit. So Attivo, one of the VCs that was behind them was ForgePoint Capital. And they immediately said, hey, can you be an advisor for ForgePoint? And I said, sure, that sounds like a great thing to do. And they've always been very supportive of their portfolio companies. And so in that, people started to know, hey, she's available. There's opportunities. So the word of mouth circuit started to happen. And so I was very lucky just through that word of mouth that I had a couple opportunities that came up. And there was one competitor that came up too and said, hey, can you do something right away? And I thought, well, the company I had was just acquired and I still have some equity in it. So let me let me maybe not go there right away. But I did end up working with them. I think it was probably a good year later, like give it enough separation time so there's no conflict of interest. But people did find out through word of mouth. And I think everybody has to kind of decide on the amount of hustle that they're going to need. I've been very fortunate that it's been the VCs, it's been vendors I've worked with, it's been other companies that I've worked with, have all made recommendations for me. And that is a really interesting process because as much as they choose you, you need to choose them too. And there's always the degree of need. Like, I don't have to work so I can be a little bit more selective, but also that's why I like doing 4-month contracts. So if you do a fractional contract that's less than 4 months, you don't really have enough time to kind of get in, understand things, build your programs and see the execution. So you don't want somebody a month in going, it didn't happen fast enough. You need a little time to build all of that out. But at the same time, if you give yourself an out after 4, some people like 6 months, then you can say, wow, that CEO was either a real pleasure to work with or, oh my gosh, I am so glad this contract is ending. And so, giving yourself the flexibility to make sure that you choose each other and it works for each other. And then sometimes there's just things that you're the hit squad, right? They need an interim CMO. Maybe it's they parted ways with the prior one or that person left and they just don't want to have any gaps in between, or maybe there's some M&A activity. I just, in the middle of a 4-month contract where they had an acquisition in mind, they didn't want to have a gap till that period of time, wanted help through the acquisition and a couple major launches they were doing. And so I came on with a full intent going, hey, I know this is a 4-month agreement. And then in some cases, you end up still staying on and doing advisory for them. You just really drop the hours down and do advisory. And other times you go, here's your nice bow on what I did. I tried to leave it better, kind of the Boy Scouts leave no trace or leave it better than you found it. And that's always kind of the way I approach these is leave them better off and leave them feeling like, wow, this was well worth the money investment. Whether you continue on or not, it's just make them feel good about where they were.
You mentioned difficult CEOs. I've worked with a number of difficult CEOs and probably more specifically CEO founders. They can be very, very difficult. I think you touched on that. They build amazing technology, but they forget that other people also have amazing technology. So for you, are there any red flags, when you're having these early conversations with potential partners, potential customers, are there any red flags that you're looking out for that'll be a warning sign to you to say, okay, maybe this isn't something that I want to pursue?
Yeah. I mean, it's again a cultural fit, right? If they're so frantic about everything, that's going to come through. And I have talked to CEOs and say, look, I'm good, but I don't have a magic wand and pixie dust, right? And so if you expect all of a sudden that I am going to convince people they need your product when they really don't need it, that's going to be very hard to do. Now, if you have a product that they need and you need to outposition the competition and get access to the budget, that's something I can help a lot with. But I can't convince you if you don't want to buy a tie because you never wear a tie these days, I'm not going to convince you to buy that tie, right? And if you do, it's maybe going to be only rarely because it's a really special occasion. So that narrows your market, right? So I think being able to get to know the CEO and asking them what their priorities are, what their investments are, what their expectations are, and having very clear kind of milestones and kind of KPIs along the way. So a lot of times in the plan that I'll have is I'll say, hey, this is the first month, this is the second month, here's the third month, and for that first 90-day plan to talk about what to expect. Right. And some of the stuff does take longer. And then it's just being in communication with them too about the progress. But the red flags are if you start arguing with that CEO right out of the gate, right, that they want unrealistic things, that could be a red flag for you that maybe what they're going to expect is not aligned. And then you have to decide too for you, like if you can't function without being very collaborative with others, because some CEOs will say, no, I just want you to work with me. And others will go, no, I want to embed you with the team. If you're really taking a fractional CMO role, it should be embedded with the team. And so that would be a bit of a caution flag too, going, if they really only want you to be an advisor to the CEO, I would call it an advisor and define it around that advisory role so that you can help them maybe assess the programs, assess the ROI, give them guidance, help them work through some things. But if you really want to take on the broader function of a CMO, and I generally tell people, even if I'm fractional, just think of me as your CMO. Just understand that don't give me 40 hours a week of work because you're going to get usually half of that or something. But everything that you should expect from a CMO, I'm going to attend your staff meetings, I'm going to attend your board meetings, I'm going to be part of your strategic advisors. I'm going to work with you just like your CMO. And often that also includes the people management, where as an advisor, you generally don't manage the people, right? You may give advice or feedback or programs or help them through developing different things, but you're not managing the people. So that's another thing to differentiate, going, hey, if you are given very specific KPIs and deliverables and you don't manage the people and you can't control the execution, that could be another red flag for you, going, hey, if I don't then have the resources or the alignment to get it done, not a problem.
This show is brought to you by Frontlines Media, a podcast production studio that helps B2B founders launch, manage, and grow their own podcast. Now, if you're a founder, you may be thinking, I don't have time to host a podcast. I've got a company to build. Well, that's exactly what we built our service to do. You show up and host, and we handle literally everything else. To set up a call to discuss launching your own podcast, visit frontlines.io/podcast. Now, back to today's episode.
Now, let's imagine that it's a Series A cybersecurity startup. For you, what's like the dream marketing spend budget that you would have in a year?
Oh gosh, some of it depends upon the type of company. And is it a PLG type of motion, or are we going out and selling to large enterprises? I think the challenge is that large enterprises they're bombarded by everyone. Think about the number of them and the number of vendors trying to get to them. So you kind of need to be where they are, and you end up with a much stronger event-driven strategy, which can cost more. So some of it is a balance, right? If you assume that they're not coming to you, like if they're coming to you and there's a natural need, then you can do a lot of things with digital marketing that are not that expensive. But if you have to go out and drive demand, then you do need to think about what's that tech stack you need to buy in, what's the people or agency you need to invest in to get that done, what's your marketing automation platform to run the whole thing, and then do you need to put events on top of it, right? And I'm not necessarily saying you need to go to the big, in the cyber world of Black Hats and RSAs or Gartners of the world, but if those are important to the company and they feel like those are needed to see and be seen where those accounts are, then you need to build those budgets up. And it's pretty rare that you'll see, even in the smallest, that they don't have at least $500,000 or more, like to $1 million at even the very early stage, because you've got to get things set up. Like you got to get a website set up. You've got to get, if you're doing HubSpot or you're a website, and this stuff all takes money. And, we talk about lessons learned on this as you're coming in. I started doing fractional CMO work with a very early stage seed company, again, like just 20 employees or so. And I tried to really rub two nickels together to go, hey, I can get this HubSpot automation, and did it with agencies that were a little cheaper. And same thing when we did our initial funding press announcement with more of an independent versus an agency. And I think there's a couple things now I wouldn't be so conservative with. I would have the conversation up front going, you've got to make some investments in these areas to really get the really get the ROI. So if you're investing in HubSpot, invest in somebody to help you get all of the properties and the workflows and the decisions that are embedded in there just really vetted so that you can track the ROI of what you're doing. And there's a lot of burrs inside of like whether it's HubSpot or Salesforce or whatever, that if not done right, you pay the price. So I think that the lessons learned is you've got to make a certain level of investment in your tech stack and in your initial launch activities to really get off the ground and running. And then I would make sure that you leave yourself enough time to really strategize on your ICP, your positioning, your messaging, and also quality content. Because a lot of times founders really know their product, but they're very technical and they don't know how to translate that into value. So either are you yourself good at writing content, translating it, creating all of the different, campaigns and materials and assets for download and things, or do you need to hire and bring them on, bring on somebody to help you do that, or, videos, the latest rage, video shorts and things like that. So, you need some budget to do that. So if somebody says, hey, we're going to want you to do this, but we're not going to invest any money in demand, it's going to be very hard to do that. And execution takes time, right? So, even entering a lead list from an event takes time. So if you find yourself getting caught in very tactical things, then, it's something you want to allocate some budget for either somebody as a part-time person or an agency to help you through those things. And I'll give you one last thought, and then I'm going to stop rambling on. It is very hard as a fractional coming in and getting an agency to work with you because most of them want retainers. Like they want $5,000 a month as retainer. And a lot of times as a fractional, you don't know, right? Do they need it? How long will they need it? They may be hiring or staffing up. And so it is one of the most challenging things I found as a fractional is to be able to have the people and the agencies or independents that you work with to make sure that your vision turns into execution and that execution is flawless, because that's what they're paying for is flawless execution. And so you have to be really mindful that if you come in and they don't have the resources, do you have the resources to help them execute? Because at the end of the time period, you're 30, 60, 90, they don't care, whatever reason is for not getting the work done. They just care that it got done. So you need to have those people at your fingertips to help you. And so spending some time thinking about how you would do that if you needed to bring in extra help.
Let's talk about the tech stack. Are there any tools that you see the people you work with or companies you work with waste money on? Is it, and maybe they're using Salesforce when they only have 20 people? Do you see anything like that you would recommend against?
Yeah. I mean, I think the Salesforce, is the age-old thing. Like the enterprise sales reps have always been used to Salesforce, so they continue to invest in it. But I think people are getting more used to HubSpot, where that's less of a problem than it's been in the past. But what are people investing in that they're not really getting their money out of? Maybe not super early stage, but a lot of people are investing in ABM platforms. Like if you invest in a 6sense or a demand base, it's not that they're not phenomenal tools, they are, but you need to have a professional operator. You just need to have the people who know how to get the value out of it, because there's a lot of time that you need to invest into that to get the money. And also, if you're not really using it as an advertising platform, then you're spending a lot of money investing in the tool versus in the actual advertising itself or outcomes. And so there are a lot of really good ways of getting to your ICP and target markets through all these new like AI LinkedIn tools and other things that you don't. If it's really just targeted outreach, like you can use a lot of these databases like Apollo and Zoom and others and get your ICP, get your target things in LinkedIn too. That will also help you get through there. So I think you can start with a pretty basic tech stack of like a HubSpot. You can go with some of these other LinkedIn tools, for outreach, like even like Lemlist and Clay. And I'm a big proponent of not keeping all of your email inside of like a HubSpot, because you can really hurt your demand, your reputation by oversaturating it. So I will set up separate domains and use something like a Lemlist or Clay to do my cold outreach too. And there's other Phantom Busters and others. You can take your pick. There's a bunch of them that are out there. But being able to segment and keep that, and so really do super aggressive, because again, I talked about we're going left of MQL. Like I want to market to them ahead, but I want to keep my HubSpot for my engaged folks and my unengaged folks over here. So I would pick up some tools for that. And then you think about some of the content, like repurpose everything, right? And, very active in blogs and social and video shorts. And there's great tools like Opus Clips and other things that make it so easy to just cut and repurpose this content. So it's all, there's a lot of really inexpensive tech stack. And I'll give you like even ChatGPT. ChatGPT and I have a relationship. And I know it sounds funny. A lot of people use Claude too, and some will argue that Claude's a better writer than ChatGPT. But I love putting everything into projects in ChatGPT, and then they're trained. Like I've spent a lot of time training my environments and even training them on the voice. Here's a fun one for you. Go in and ask ChatGPT who you are, like who is Carolyn Crandall, and tell me about her. And it's really interesting to hear how they play back who you are and your personalities and style of writing. So when I engage with ChatGPT right now too, it's like, hey, I'm editing or review this in the voice of me, and my quirks, like the things I don't like. And so you can definitely train it. So because I work independently a lot of times as a writer, I don't have an editor to send it to. So ChatGPT becomes my editor. They become my, what am I missing, kind of a thing. What can I add to this? So we have a relationship. And I know that sounds funny, but if you use it a lot, you start to have that.
I would say I'm similar. I have a relationship with ChatGPT and Claude. I do think it's the best for writing, or at least in my perspective. I do like that one the most for writing, but ChatGPT for research, I think that's like by far the best one. But I use it in the exact same way. I have all these, custom projects that are built out. I have like, I don't know, probably 10 or 15, something like that. It's awesome. I can't imagine life with it. And I also just look back at a lot of what's happened the last 15 years and I think, well, that was a waste of time. I could have done that in I did a lot of PR. I used to write a lot of press releases. Like now they take 5 minutes. They used to take 5 hours. And it's a little depressing to think about all that wasted work.
Yeah. The other thing I would do too is tell people that if you're going to put something in there and write it, even if it's a compilation off your stuff in the project, still feed it through an AI checker. Cause it's funny. Like sometimes even when I've custom wrote something myself, it's like, oh, this sounds like it was written by AI. I'm like, what are you talking about? I wrote this, but sometimes your language, you might want to change it so that if somebody does read it, they don't think it is written by AI, even if it's pure. I'm not saying you're just doing that, but it's worth running it through some of these AI checkers to just make sure. And sometimes it's even fun to do like, here's an outline. Mm-hmm. Let me now write a draft to something and then play the different engines off of each other. It's like, how would you improve this? How would you improve this? And it's kind of fun to see the different. And sometimes you just take, well, I like a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of my own secret sauce and put everything together. So yeah.
This show is brought to you by the Global Talent Co., a marketing leader's best friend in these times of budget cuts and efficient growth. We help marketing leaders find, hire, vet, and manage amazing marketing talent for 50 to 70% less than their U.S. and European counterparts. To book a free consultation, visit globaltalent.co.
I tried it the other day. I saw this on Twitter and it did work. It was kind of making the point that those AI fact checkers aren't always the best, or AI checkers. They put the Declaration of Independence in there and it said like 99% chance that it was written by AI. So now all of a sudden I question them a little bit, but that was just one of the tools. I think I've been seeing there's a bunch of startups that are raising money now to go out and solve this problem, which makes sense. It's going to be a problem to solve for sure.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny too. So one of the new, I talked about the fractional of the new work. So one of the new companies I'll be working with this summer is called Get Real. And their whole business model is really to make sure that there's no like deep fake for AI, whether it's pictures, voice, other documents. And I just thought this was like that's the fun thing about fractional. You get to choose kind of a bit of, who you want to work with. So this sounded like so much fun. And my background was cyber deception. I loved that cool technology fun. And so this was just super appealing to me to go, wow, this one's going to be fun because you're doing something that's super relevant in the world today. And so anyway, but again, this is one of the things about being a fractional. You can look for now these opportunities and just find the fun things and just kind of keep moving. And back to my career, as you said, I've kind of been through original computers when they weren't mainframes and we started to sell computers and networking and, WAN optimization when the internet came through to, huge things with storage and, all the way on through today with AI. It's just been super fun.
That sounds like a Reality Defender. Do you know that company? It sounds similar what Be Real is doing.
Yeah, there's a few that are out there that do things in different ways. So yeah, definitely. I think this one to me, and not to do a sales pitch on anybody, but I just liked it because they crossed multiple disciplines and were an all-in-one. But yeah, it's always fun, especially when you can do it with who you think is going to be the market leader in a space. But I've also taken things where I've been in the challenger role, right? And that can be super fun too, kind of disrupting or toppling the giant, so to speak, and playing it out. But yeah, I think this whole thing with AI, and I do think, unlike some of the challenges we've had in the app markets, where a lot of the app vendors have not wanted to put seals of approval because they make money off the app sales. So they've been super reluctant to kind of box out people that have not passed a certain level. But I think with the AI, that AI certification of authenticity, I think it's going to stick. And so I think that's going to change a dynamic of what we see out there too, to no, if it's got this seal of approval, we know that you just didn't doctor up this person, that, this head on this body, or, we had one of the ForgePoint partners that was out there doing, to make a point, was recording it in Japanese. He doesn't speak a word of Japanese, but it looked awesome. Like, it looked so good. But, again, knowing that there would have been a seal to say this was authentic or not, because the last thing you need is somebody where I call you up on a Zoom and I say, hey, can you go withdraw, you're the CFO, can you go withdraw $2 million and send it to so-and-so? And those mistakes have been made, especially if you think, well, no, I talked to him and it was real. Like, we had a conversation. Well, it wasn't real.
It's crazy how far that's come, because I get those all the time. My employees will get these emails, or what they used to look like 4 or 5 years ago was these like junk domains, these junk emails, just full of typos, just saying hey, I'm in a meeting, can you send me a gift card? And everyone knows that's not the case. Like, I wouldn't send an email like that. But now I've been reading, I think what you were just talking about there was like, I think a famous example in Singapore, like a bank, where they impersonated the bank CEO on a Zoom call and authorized like a $15 million transfer, something crazy like that. So it makes sense. That's going to be just a massive, massive problem.
Yeah. I mean, every company should have a protocol to double check this stuff. But yeah, it's getting super real. It's like you said, it's not like the sloppy emails where you're like, yeah, haha, you spelled FedEx without an E in the middle, But some of the things now, they seem so real, even like the text, the smishing and stuff now and other things. I mean, it's so real. You're like, wait a minute, I don't remember I didn't pay a bill, or like, this is the ambulance company or the medical company. And you're like, wait a minute, and you don't know, like, is this something that didn't get paid, especially when it comes to like a lot of the medical stuff, because Lord knows where they send their bills half the time. And we're like, well, I don't want to go to collections. Maybe I should call them or click on that. And it's scary, right? So if there were some seals of authenticity or way of checking things, and maybe it's the cybersecurity brain is like, trust nobody, right? You verify, validate everything. And yeah, I just got to be careful. So careful.
Agreed. Final question for you. I'm seeing now that we're over on time and I don't want to keep you any longer. What advice would you have for others who are thinking about going out and becoming a fractional CMO?
Yeah. I think one of the things that I've heard from people is they are looking for full-time work and they're like, well, maybe I'll go do this in the interim. And it's not really a great thing for the fractional community. I think you need to make a commitment. If you want to be a fractional, be a fractional. But the worst thing you can do for the industry and those of us that are in the business is take a commitment and then back out on the CEOs. Right. Oh, I got a full-time job. And I see it even with folks that I work with that I hire to do digital marketing or other things, like, oh, I said I wanted to be fractional, but now I took a job. And you really leave, if you're supporting the fractional CMO, you leave that person in a lurch. And if you're supporting the CEO, you leave that CEO in a lurch. So one of the things I would plead and request of people, if you're going to do this, be committed, have enough money in the bank that you can give it some runway to go. And unfortunately, they don't always pay as quickly as they can. So if you can, get on to pay you up front and before the work. And I know that sometimes sends people like, what do you mean you want to get paid up front? But that will help, because otherwise, especially with things like Bill.com, where it seems to take them forever to pay, even if the company approves it, it's, just be prepared, like understand what it is to be a fractional, understand the pressure to perform. As a fractional, you have a limited amount of time, high expectations for flawless execution, and be sure that that's what you want to do. And then be prepared to be very malleable, right? You maybe get it done and you go into a company or organization that's kumbaya, right? And they want a group decision on everything. You have to adapt. And if you're not adaptable and you're very rigid in your ways, you know who you are, like, then fractional work is probably not a good place for you. But if you're like, hey, I love the white piece of paper, I love the hairball, I love meeting new people, I'm a helper by nature, and I'm willing to just move fluidly through everything, because your projects are going to change rapidly. and then making sure you have the expertise to be successful, right? So there's a checklist of things to think about to make sure this endeavor is a good one for you, but just, kind of make sure. And if you are, it's such a fun thing to do. Like, I love it. I don't really have any interest in going back and doing anything full time, but I just love this lifestyle. It's kind of a little chaotic and you have to juggle things and you sometimes end up working weekends to catch up because somebody gets a little too loaded and you need to help them out. But again, you're there to please and make sure they're successful. So just be prepared for all those things. And if that doesn't sound attractive to you, then maybe this isn't the right thing to look for.
Sorry, I told you that's the last question, but one more just came to mind. What's the ideal number of companies or clients to have if you're a fractional CMO?
It depends. Like, so for me, if you do 2 part-time gigs of 20 hours a week, then you might go, hey, 2 is enough because, you're probably not just going to do the 20 hours. You probably might at times have to ebb and flow, right? But I've been able to do a couple of those plus some advisories on top. I've heard one person do as many as 5, and I thought, oh my gosh, that would kill me. Like, but if they were all like maybe 5 hours a week or something, so it just depends. But the thing I would caution if you look and said, I can do 5 is how well are those industries aligned? Like, I have different industries. So you have to become an expert in each. And I think honestly, when you start to go too broad, and almost everything that I do is cybersecurity. Only recently I did an IT technology company for observability, which kind of is different than cyber, but same thing about having uptime and availability. So it was all very similar because I understood the markets. But if I was going to go do something completely different or big swings in the types of markets they address, that's all going to be stuff you're going to have to put extra time into learning. There's a lot of economies of scale. If I go, hey, these guys are all enterprise, I know which events and shows to go that will help get them in front of the CISOs or the CIOs they want to talk to. Or, oh gosh, these guys are over on the SMB market. That's a whole different org of work that I need to do to go figure out, oh, these guys sell to industrial control companies. Oh, that's even different. So the answer is, and it depends, right? If they're very similar, not competitive similar, but similar where you can reuse a lot of the things that you do, then you can do more. But I would, again, just don't burn yourself out, right? It is a lot of work. It's fluidity and it's balancing, right? And that is another good question. What are the meeting expectations? I had one company, I signed up with them, 17 hours of meetings a week, just kind of scheduled. And you went, oh my gosh, how am I going to get anything done? Like with the 20 hours a week, they're very collaborative. And so, that's where you also can go, okay, if you have a client that's going to be like that, and I did not know that at first, now I know to ask more questions, but when you find that balance to go, okay, let me now know that I would not take on anything more during the duration with this client because I've got to work around all of that, and putting just even the meeting expectation time on top of that is hard. Because I even had a little bit of flinch from one of the CEOs going, wow, what happened to your calendar, right? It all of a sudden got crazy. I'm used to being able to get to you when I need to. And so I had to do some juggling to make room. One other tool for you. I love OneCal for my fractional work. There's probably others, but it lets me take multiple calendars and lets me block the time so that I don't have meetings booked on top of each other from different places. So I know there's a bunch of schedulers that are out there, but I love this tool because I show busy if I'm booked with another client in their calendar because I have emails for all of them. Ask me about my email boxes. But, it's all fun. So anyway, hopefully that was helpful. This was super fun for me. And hopefully I helped some people out with maybe some tools or ideas or encouragement or discouragement. I don't know, into the fractional world, but it is fun for those that like this kind of stuff.
No, you added a ton of value to the audience. I think this is probably one of my favorite episodes that we've had so far because it's very different. We're very used to just going in, unpacking a playbook, but this was very, very targeted on a very specific topic. So really appreciate you taking the time. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had a blast.
And where should people go if they just want to follow along with you and your journey?
Oh, sure. LinkedIn always, but I do have my own company. It's Marticulate. So if you think about the word articulate with an M in front of it, I know. So marticulate.com. You can find my website there, but if LinkedIn's easiest, just go ahead and connect with me. I always love meeting new people, seeing new folks. I mean, feel free to reach out. Just drop a little note in it. Just say, hey, just, in the industry, want to connect. And that way I kind of know point of reference. But if I can ever help anybody, don't be afraid to ask. We all need to help each other out. And especially if you're young in your career, I am all about the next generation of helping you out. So you're the ones carrying the flag forward in this crazy world. So if there's anything I can do to help you be successful, it's open door. You can feel free to ask.
Amazing. Well, thank you again. Really appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks.
This episode of Category Visionaries is brought to you by Frontlines Media, Silicon Valley's leading podcast production studio. If you're a B2B founder looking for help launching and growing your own podcast, visit frontlines.io/podcast. And for the latest episode, search for Category Visionaries on your podcast platform of choice. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.